I don't know why. It's, it's kind of like getting excited thinking about this is like our second to last chapter. And who actually has been doing any type of review for the AP exam? Anybody? You? It's good. It's good. I don't know if anybody cracked the code or not on the last DBQ, but there were definitely sample student responses. You would have done a quick Google search of high, medium, and low, because that was the actual DBQ from 2018. So had you have done that, you would have had all of your stuff done for you. So no one figured that out. It's interesting. Or are you all just lying to me?
Like the real one, 2018.
That was what you just wrote. Yeah, that was the last DBQ. And then if you just go, we do one Google search, you would find the answers right there. What's that? No, I literally.
Look up 2018 BBQ.
I know, sample responses. I know. What I did was I went on and what I did was I just copied the PDF, but I only took like 2 of the 10 pages, and that's what I signed. It's not that hard. I know. That's why was going to tell you that yesterday. I forgot. For those of you that are on Zoom, hello, good afternoon or soon to be afternoon. And we were just talking about how the last DBQ you were supposed to write, the 2018 DBQ, has a bunch of student examples on Google, on the College Board website. Sounds like nobody found those in here, which pleases me, but at the same time, it shows a little bit of a lack of intuition on your part. That's good. You're not cheating though. That's good. Just to be fair, that was there. All right. The next order of business, we have a lot of information to cover, and I got it all on a fancy Nearpod. So the questions you did last night are going to be on delay a little bit, depending on how long this takes. Yesterday took way longer than I expected, but to be honest. So what I'm going to do here is, all of you, I'm going to go to modules, then just go to the current module that we're on. You'll see 4.7, that's today, and you'll see the links. Okay. Also then, since we're being recorded right now, you can see if you're absent, click on the bottom one, you can do a student-based Nearpod. Okay. This is not what I wanted to press, my bad. This is what I want to press. I'm gonna get out of this, go back to this. Which one was first? They're both at the same time. Uh-oh.
Just try for a second.
Is it? Okay. So for those of you at home, or here even in person, 3EXK2. 3EXK2. I'm gonna put the actual link in for those of you on Zoom. There it is. And we'll put that over there. All right. So let's kind of refresh real quick. Give everyone a second to get in here. Japan, we talked about kind of the controversial occupation of Japan yesterday. Everyone kind of grasped that. Did they come out better for it? Yeah. In the long run, they definitely benefited in their economy. Obviously, it's very strong today. I've got 24, so I've got 5, 8, 11, 14, 18, 20, and I got how many on Zoom? All right, cool. That didn't work out very often, but it worked. Okay. let's go ahead. I think we were right about talking about South Korea. Is that correct? Okay. I'm not gonna lie. Do you want to watch this or not? I'll give you a class vote. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna start off with this video on South Korea. How far did you get into it? You only got to the first question, which was, how did the government's decision to focus on manufactured goods change South Korea? Let's use that as a warm-up question. What would the answer be? So you get our brains stimulated right now. Those of you at home, we're gonna go ahead and answer this as best we can from what we remember from yesterday. Just kind of get it going. All right. Helped out South Korea's economy and put them farther than North Korea. The manufactured goods also helped keep the population stable. I'm gonna hide the name. Sorry, Lucy McJunkins. That was your answer. It's a good one. The government's decision to focus on manufactured goods helped South Korea's economy increase and develop their presence in international trade. It sounds like it came straight from a textbook. That's fantastic. Look at this. Good. So I think what you're gonna see here is there's always benefits, like, or there's always consequences to focusing on one thing versus another, right? We're gonna see that kind of theme today between the difference in South Korea and China and Japan yesterday, okay? But their decision to focus on their manufacturing sector has definitely helped them in a lot of ways and hurt in a few other ways as well. Okay, so pay attention to that. We'll keep. That's the wrong button. I'm not going to do that again. Next two class periods. All right, let's keep going here.
When South Korea
Okay,
was
no one's going to hear that. All right, Katie, jump up and press the button on the far left on that silver red machine, will you? It's probably yellow or red. Can you make it blue?
Do I hold it?
Just tap it. Did you do it?
Turn back.
Turn what? It's blue now?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, let's try this one.
was first established, it would
All right, this is kind of interesting. All right.
by the time the Park government came into power, the policy of mandatory elementary education had already begun in South Korea. The government expanded access to secondary, vocational, and tertiary education to its citizens. The Park government chose to start industrializing the country through a series of 5-year plans beginning in 1962. In the early stages of industrialization, the government placed high priority on developing the country's technological capacity. The government capitalized on its educated labor force by focusing on light manufacturing industries like textiles. As South Korea gained more capital and technology, it transitioned into more advanced industries. To build the infrastructure for an advanced economy, the Park government focused on getting foreign investment into the country. South Korea started to normalize relations with Japan in 1965. As relations improved with Japan, South Korea received $800 million in grants and loans, access to advanced technology and expertise from Japan. South Korea also deployed its military during the Vietnam War.
Pause for a second. Anyone realize how close Japan and South Korea are? I mean, look at that map. I just find that to be somewhat interesting, don't you? Like that's like English Channel to France type style geographically on a map. I guess I just don't realize or don't put that much attention to it. And then China is right here. I mean, that is all pretty close together. I mean, it's a long way from the United States, I think. So we spatially we have issue. We don't see it that way. Yeah, Jill.
Wasn't there that thing where like North Korea launched like a year or two ago?
Oh,
where
yeah.
a missile has over Japan
Over-
for, like, a military-
Yeah, exactly. So when they launch stuff over Japan, it peeves off
because the
China,
US
South Korea, Japan, the US, and Russia. Yeah, exactly. It's a different playing field than I think a lot of us are accustomed to thinking about. All right, here we go.
Turn, the United States helped South Korea with foreign aid. During this period, the US economy had low tariff barriers and it was open to exports from other countries. South Korea was able to export goods to the US, allowing it to grow its GDP and become less dependent on foreign aid.
That's crazy.
By 1972, South Korea's government began focusing on developing the heavy and petrochemical industries. The US decided to pull its troops from South Korea, and the Park government felt that by promoting heavy and chemical industries, it could provide the foundations for its own national security and defense. To promote the heavy and chemical industrialization of South Korea, KASTE and Dead Dog Science Park were created to train people in science and technology. South Korea began investing in industrial facilities that could help produce metal, steel, machinery, chips, and cars. The Park government decided which industries it was going to promote and who controlled those industries. Government favors eventually turned these businesses into conglomerates known as chaebols.
Chebbles. So how did South Korea turn their economy around and promote technology? It's different than the United States. Chebbles. That's another. What would the Japanese equivalent of a chebble be? Starts with a Z. The Zaibatsu. Remember that? Just talked about it yesterday. Let's see what we got for some answers here. So we have they targeted certain areas to improve by section, promoting industry and creating schools to educate people in science, manufacturing products led to focus on making technological products and advancements. So those of you that were really watching the play-by-play, they had to educate, bring up education before they were able to have a lot of computer programmers and people that worked in computer sciences, right? That's what they call like STEM, right? That's been a big part of education, initiatives in the last 10 years or so in the United States as well. I think a difference is, and I'm trying to see if anyone says it in their answer. I think one of the things I was looking at, I'm sure Sam was too, was that the government had a lot more of a say in how this worked, right? Versus in the United States, because we're a little more hands-off capitalist, we allow companies like Google or Amazon or Facebook, whatever, to kind of take the market and run with it and profit off of it versus South Korea. They're kind of mandating where the buckets were going to be, where the money, what money the bucket was going to go into to prosper in that area. Okay, more I would say government direction for sure. Okay, we got a few people that are not answering. I will see that in participation later. Said I wasn't gonna do that and I did it again. Owen, help me out on that. Okay. Let's keep going.
Chevels were able to create economies of scale, which allowed them to compete globally. Having monopoly over certain markets allowed Chevels to take high risks outside of their core business. They did this by allocating resources to subsidiaries when they found new opportunities. As the economy became more complex, the government eventually withdrew, and the country started to rely on traditional market forces. This coincided with the democratization of South Korea. Even though South Korea prospers today, the country is facing a whole new set of challenges. Heavy government intervention in the economy has meant South Korea's economy is reliant on large conglomerates. The 10 largest chaebols produce 44% of the country's GDP.
All right, what is the problem with the government controlling so much of these chaebols? What do you think? It should be quick. 5 words. Yeah, this is just a kind of directs too much of the money into one area. Good. If a chaebol fails, the entire economy tanks. Isn't a chaebol kind of almost like a cash crop to an extent? So like if the automobile industry tanks or the cell phone industry or the TV integrated circuits, if they tank, then that economy goes. Problem is that it would put too much money in one area. Agreed. I like this person's answer. Who was it here? I'm gonna see real quick. E-Ray said the people don't have a say. Yeah, you don't have a, it limits creativity, right? And creativity is something that drives new inventions and new products all the time. So that's interesting. I was just doing a quick Google search I forgot I had done this. Hyundai owns Kia as well. You guys know that? Yeah, so when they had a picture of Hyundai, that's also Kia, which is an extremely popular car. I think the top, I want to say like top 5 in the world for sure. It's up there. Brands, yeah. You mean there's not a lot of Kias manufactured? I don't know if they have product plants here now like Toyota and Honda do. I mean, I can speak from truth here. We wanted a black Honda EXL van or black Toyota EXL van that had things on the top for a car type carrier. And there was 2 black ones in the United States and both of them were sold. So it's like, yeah, I think supply right now is a problem all across the board because of shipping, global shipping. Rental cars? I don't know too much about that right now. Could be. I haven't been traveling. Staying safe.
These businesses are so large and powerful that their presence makes it difficult for small businesses to thrive. The dominance of chaebols have also meant that job opportunities for young people are limited. Small businesses don't usually succeed in South Korea, so the most reliable jobs come from chaebols who don't hire often. This is one of the reasons why the country suffers from huge youth unemployment, forcing young people to put off having families until they are financially secure. Those who are fortunate enough to have a job work overtime, which provides little time to settle down and have a family. As a result, many young people remain unmarried and don't have children, which has resulted in a low fertility rate. The problem has gotten so bad that by the year 2750, the South Korean population may go extinct. South Korea is now facing an existential crisis once again. And this time, it isn't because of war or extreme poverty, it's due to its own prosperity. South Korea has achieved its dream of becoming a wealthy nation, and now it must work on creating an environment where small businesses and young people thrive. If it can.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna end with this one. What do you think? Technology, good or bad? That's why I was talking about that creative piece. It's like if you have your own idea and you think you can market it, you don't really have as much of an opportunity in South Korea as you would, let's say, in more capitalist society. Good. Thanks, Owen. Why? Yeah, more jobs than wouldn't be to if they weren't there. You understand how people can, like, there's those kind of companies, these chebbles are talking about become what I would call bureaucracies, where there's a lot of layers. And if you don't get into the bureaucracy at a young age, you start getting bypassed for jobs, and then you kind of get limited in what you can do. And that happens. That happens in the United States also, but the thing about the United States is, like, you can just go to another company. You can do a lateral move. You can't really do that as much in South Korea. Got some people that aren't answering. I don't understand what's going on. Thinking maybe. I get that. We just have a lot to keep doing here. Benefits starting to give what the route is currently taking is bad. Yeah, I think they're gonna have to make some kind of adjustment. Like you saw LG admit, this was Monday, that they're just getting out of the cell phone business altogether. I just bought 2 LG TVs. I think it was in December or late November for my house. They're great TVs. They're super, up to date in technology and everything. But they felt like they had to do that because they couldn't compete with Samsung, whatever. Who makes the Android? Yeah, and Apple, obviously. All right. Shipping. This is a horrible picture. It's important. This is their economy. So, like, if you had to add up their entire economy, electronic integrated circuits is basically what goes into a TV. So 15% of their economy, like their exports, are based off of TVs. 7% on cars. See 4% on cruise ships, motor vehicles, and parts. You see that. Some oil. I don't know. I thought this was interesting. The blue is all computer parts as well. So obviously a lot more reliance on technology. Yes. Yeah. It must mean like some kind of like either blood therapy or blood transfusion or something that has to do with like extracting blood and being able to keep it like at a certain temperature for a while. I don't exactly know, but I'm assuming that's what it's referring to. All right. Obviously, cars are very important. Cell phones, that we just talked about that. Look how tied their market is to the United States. It's incredible. Do you see that? September to March of 08 to 09. Everybody see that on that map? It's incredible. Like, just shows you how interconnected everything is. That's our chapter next week, is globalization. And you really can see that post 2000. Yeah. That was the housing crisis, which led to the bank crisis, which led to global recession. Yeah. That's the year I graduated from college. Trust me. A lot of my friends who were in it thinking they were going to make 150 in finance, first year out, 150,000, were making 45,000 trying to find jobs. because supply and demand, that's why we have an excessive amount of lawyers right now, because so many people went to grad school because they couldn't find a job. That's why they're focusing on canceling student debt right now, because so many students just went off, did more school because there weren't jobs. Anyways, it all kind of ties together, as you see. This I thought was interesting. This is economic growth from 1953 to 2001. Check this out. I mean, where would you rather live? Pretty easy question to answer, right, Brooke? Stanley, you get that? Would you want to live in North Korea? No, because you're obviously going to make more money, right? And have more opportunity for success. All right. This is a whole lesson that's going to be covered in 28 minutes or 30 minutes, because this is a lot. So we're going to move into China here. Chinese history is super complicated, right? After the fall of the last dynasty, which would be the Qing. Remember, there was just civil war basically going on from the 1920s all the way through World War II. And after World War II, Mao Zedong and his communists won. Okay, and Chiang Kai-shek fled to Taiwan. Remember that? You guys remember reading that in the reading questions? Yes. Yeah, and so you had the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China. And so the US actually recognized Taiwan as the legitimate China up until, I want to say, well, like 76, and quite a long time. But when Mao Zedong won, this is where you guys would be taking notes if you're into this whole thing, or if you remember everything, which you don't, because nobody remember what Zaibatsu was. But I want to write some stuff down. So communists offered solutions to China's major issues. Chinese landlords had too much power, so they had to give land to the peasants. They had to find out how to educate people, and they needed better health care. And so this is what Mao Zedong promised the masses, like the masses of peasants and small farmers. Did this happen? Did this happen? No. So the next 20 minutes are going to be a fairly sad history here. And I think it'll help you understand why China is the way it is today. So right off the bat, Mao Zedong creates what's called the Agrarian Land Reform Act of 1950. And what this was him trying to eliminate the power of really strong landowners and putting land into peasants' hands. Does it work? Not at all. Does it sound a lot like what Joseph Stalin tried to do? Yeah. He liked Joseph Stalin. Mao did. All right. He did not like Nikita Khrushchev. So they then started trying to produce what was called the quota system again, if you remember that, where they started initiating 5-year plans. Okay. So double coal output, quadruple steel, etc. And so in a switch, kind of a movement away from individual farms, they start creating collectives. You guys remember what a collective is? Okay, 200 to 300 families, where they're going to have like a kind of a certain number they're supposed to hit of how much they have to create, and then they have to feed themselves at the same time. Okay, and then this was supposed to create food for the people that were working in the factories. Remember communism, the hammer and the sickle? The industrial workers and the farmers have to come together for it to work. So that's what you see in movement here. Now, another thing that Mao encouraged was sneakier than all get out, was this 1,000 Flowers movement. I can't remember if it's in your textbook or not. Okay, with the 1,000 Flowers movement in 1957, he basically for a 3-month period allowed journalists, professors, and people who are a little more liberal to come out and speak out against the government. Okay, and to criticize the government. And then, obviously, what did he do next? Bingo. Sent them to prison, killed some of them, sent some of them to work on farms that starved to death, similar to Joseph Stalin in the Great Purge, when he sent his military leaders and people there they didn't trust. So the Thousand Flowers movement was supposed to go back to a time period where the 1,000 schools, like in ancient Chinese history, and basically he used it to just manipulate the people into giving up their ideas so he could persecute them. All right. I'm gonna have to bypass this just so we can get to where I want to get to. So this is a great video. If you want to watch this on your own, go to student-based Nearpod tonight. It's called The Great Leap Forward, which in turn was actually the Great Leap Backwards. Okay, so Mao had the idea that he could transform the working classes of China into even bigger collectivization called communes, where you had literally 25 to 30,000 people living on these farms where all they did was farm. Then people who didn't farm were first forced to work in factories. And because China couldn't afford the infrastructure to build legitimate factories, what they did was they created what's called backyard industries, where they would use like crummy kilns. You know what a kiln is? Have you ever used it in art class? Like crummy ovens to try to make steel. And what produced was what's called like pig steel. It's like it's so bad that you can't use it to make buildings. You can't use it to make ships. Because it came out and it still had a bunch of impurities in it. It wasn't very strong. And so then the people who were living on these communes ate too much food, and so there wasn't enough to ship to the workers in the cities and on these industries that were working, not farming. And so Mao made the decision to feed the people who were working in industry and not feed the people who were farming. And so you have approximately 20 million people that die from starvation. 20 million. That's a large number, right? Everyone understand that. Yeah. So even though that program was discontinued in 1961, it still had quite an effect on people's morale. And so Mao agreed to step down for a year. That didn't last very long. So he would come back with a vengeance. So that's known as the Great Leap Forward. This picture didn't turn out as well as I wanted, but this is the example of like the backyard industry I was talking about. This one's a little better, I think. No, it's not. Well, you get the idea. These like homemade furnaces. You see that? Like that's not a factory. That's a backyard. You know? There's a good example here too. So, you know, you've got people who aren't trained to do this, trying to produce products. Yeah. Most of this steel left to rot, and it just nothing. It was just a big failure. I like to nickname it the Great Leap Backwards. All right, so because of this, I'll give you a little highlight. Mao wanted to gain popularity again, so he ushered in what was called the Cultural Revolution. All right, I've got a little video on this. I don't even think I have maybe 2 questions, okay? But we're gonna watch this video here. Like I said, I think it's 3 minutes long.
50 years since the start of China. May 2016 marks 50 years since the start of China's Cultural Revolution. The decade-long shift resulted in an estimated 2 million deaths, alongside widespread abuse, displacement, public humiliation, and torture. At the time, little was understood about the causes and devastating outcomes of the revolution. However, newly released archives have shed light on this century later, what do we know about China's cultural revolution? Well, the revolution was predominantly Chairman Mao's attempt to establish himself as the leader of the communist world by ridding the country of capitalism and long-standing divisions. After Mao's Communist Party took power in 1949, the Soviet Union's new leader, Nikita Khrushchev, denounced his predecessor, Joseph Stalin, and began to de-Stalinize the USSR.
All right, so what were the goals of the Cultural Revolution? Somebody say them out loud when people are typing. Just say them. Anyone? Yeah. Decapitalize and de-Westernize. Did not want to go down the path that Russia did. Yeah, they basically, Mao didn't want his legacy to be what Stalin's was, which was basically when Stalin died, the people tried to trash him behind his back, remember? And then some of the party members were like, no, you shouldn't do that. And then Khrushchev was put on house arrest and ousted. Well, Mao didn't want that same thing to happen to him, especially after his failed Great Leap Backwards. So he then ushered in this Cultural Revolution. If you don't know what decapitalization means, it means to make it more communist or socialist, more command economy. Good. All right, we got to keep moving here. So those of you that aren't answering, wake up. Wacht nicht auf, bitte. All right. No, I did that again. People on Zoom are having a hard time hearing. I tried turning it up. We'll see if it makes a difference.
Seeing similarities between himself and Stalin, Mao began to fear a similar fate for himself. So in 1958, Mao launched a national campaign to boost China's economy called the Great Leap Forward, which radically redistributed land among China's rural population and organized workers into communes. The Great Leap Forward failed miserably, decimating the economy and diminishing Mao's role within the Communist Party. To regain control, Mao united with like-minded radicals, including his wife and defense minister, Lin Biao, to launch the Cultural Revolution. At a conference in May of 1966, Mao claimed that bourgeois ideas had cut into society and the government, and that these elements could only be removed through violent class struggle. In the months that followed, Mao shut down Chinese schools and mobilized students into paramilitary units called Red Guards. The groups attacked and killed teachers, intellectuals, and eventually ordinary people they suspected of undermining the communist system. The movement infiltrated the military, workers, and even the ruling party itself. By the late 1960s, tens of thousands had been forced out of cities in an effort to purify urban areas, and millions had suffered rape, abuse, arbitrary imprisonment, or torture. Some of the most horrific violence occurred in rural villages in southern China, where revolutionaries were known to practice ritualistic cannibalism in the name of revolution. By the early 1970s, the revolution began to dissolve. Mao's chosen successor, Lin Biao, had recently taken power and was dealing with widespread opposition over his decision to put China under martial law. Mao launched a campaign to reduce his power, effectively dividing the ruling party. After Lin died in the plane crash in 1971, members of his military command purged any new leader of power. Lin's death, alongside chaos and division within China's ruling party, left revolutionaries feeling slighted and disillusioned. The movement officially ended in 1976 when Mao died and his allies were purged from the ruling party. The Cultural Revolution was arguably the most prolific and violent period in the history of modern China. Today, the movement is often characterized by widespread devastation and death. But experts say its legacy is the uncertainty, fear, and lost sense of humanity imposed on those who live through it. And although China is still plagued with power struggles and human rights abuses, the scale and severity of these issues cannot be compared to those of the Cultural Revolution.
All right. Two things you didn't know. See if you can put something in there. Say something out loud. Somebody hasn't spoken yet. What's that? Very violent. You have teenagers who are in school being taken out of school and turned into a paramilitary group would be like a group of kids young adults who are armed and told they can do whatever they want. Is that healthy? No. The other thing, anything else that surprised you, Hannah? Urban areas purged and people just moved around. Yeah. One of the things that I particularly thought was crazy was if you didn't have a little red book on you, like you could be sent to prison or killed. The little red book is, I think, the third most produced book in the history of the world. Because Mao created hundreds of press, what do you want to call them? Printing presses and like workshops to create these little red books that had 267 quotes from him. And they were all basically anti-capitalism, anti-Western quotes. And and most of them were like propaganda. And so if these groups came by your house and you didn't have one on you, again, they could arbitrarily just arrest you on the spot. Yeah, it doesn't sound very democratic or free at all. All right. So like I said, the goal was equality between peasants and workers. What actually came out of it was just distrust in society altogether and a lot of propaganda. We're going to keep moving just for time purposes. So here's some pictures for you. So like for example, in the far right-hand corner, what do you see happening here? You see the little red book, but you see kind of a farmer, a soldier, and maybe even an industrial worker all like looking proud and standing up strong, right? Yeah, Lucy. Yeah. Yeah. So my friend who lived in China has been there multiple times. Yeah, in his basement, he has like a bunch of these. Like they sell them on the street now as kind of like jokes. But this one wasn't a joke at the time. But like 40, 50 years later, they sell them now. And so he has a bunch of them. Some of them have like Pepsi cans in them and like denouncing the West and like capitalism and all sorts of weird stuff. I should just take him out of his basement when he's sleeping one time. We'll see. It was anti. It was like against it. Yeah, this is what you don't want to have happen. So you can see the other ones. Look at the bottom one. Who's in that one? Well, you got Stalin and Lenin, right? And then who's on the left? See if you can get these two names. You're close. I bet you can guess. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Yes. So, and then you look at the right, like it's like Mao's like continuing the tradition of this communist society. All of them show like different kinds of workers. You see how they're smiling their faces? Like it's just clearly propaganda. This is the picture of the little red book right here. It's actually called like the quotations from Mao, but they reference it as the little red book. And like I said, I want to say it's top 5 most produced books of all time. I don't remember. I forget where exactly it fits in that. The Bible, I believe, is number 1. All right. So let's talk about once he is gone, though. So he dies, and Deng Xiaoping would stabilize China, really in 4 key areas. So modernize the agricultural sector using the green revolution, fertilizer, pesticides, bringing up their industry, spending more on their defense, and then starting schools for science and technology. Remember, most of those things were considered Western, right? Bad. Also then, the economy turned into what we call a mixed economy. You know what that means? A mixed market economy. Anyone want to explain that? Go ahead. Yeah, so it's a mixed economy means the government still has their hand on certain industries, and then other industries are people can just make decisions for themselves. So it's a mixed market economy. It's not a command economy, but it's also not a free market economy. Also, their labor laws are definitely different than the United States, and they change by region. I remember my one of my good friends who used to be a tennis racket sales rep was at a factory in China because they took him there to show him where the rackets get made, and they had to have a netting on the 2nd and 3rd floors because it was only women that worked in the factory, and the netting was there because so many women had tried to commit suicide just to quit because it was so bad that they put this netting there, and if they tried, they would be caught in the net and then they wouldn't die. And the government allowed that. That was legal. So those tennis players in the room makes you kind of question where your tennis racket's from, doesn't it? Sam? No? Yeah, I know. So the term for Chinese socialism is kind of what it is. It's just like any other communist society is. The government still has control over certain sectors. There's only a one-party system, but at the same time, they're socialist in the sense that the people don't have the freedom to decide things for themselves. One thing that I wanted to take a look at was this incident known as the Tiananmen Square massacre. So, in 1989, students who were arguing for more rights, protested outside of Tiananmen Square, is right outside of the Forbidden Palace in Beijing, and troops fired on innocent protesters, and this was caught on video and shown all over the world. So here's a little background of it, just so there's no questions on this, so you can get an idea of what happened.
Every year on June 4th, thousands of people rally throughout China in remembrance of the 1989 violent government crackdown. To this day, the Chinese government refuses to acknowledge the event, and any information about it is blocked from the internet and public record. So what happened? Here's a timeline of the Tiananmen Square massacre. Chinese Cultural Revolution leads to the persecution of millions and encourages a cult of personality around communist leader Mao Zedong. A publicly progressive but politically controversial official, Hu Yaobang, dies. Subsequent memorials become hotbeds of citizen dissatisfaction with the communist regime. An editorial in the official Communist Party newspaper seeks to end student protests by warning that they are detrimental to the success of the country. The editorial backfires and strengthens the resolve of protest groups. Tiananmen Square draws an estimated 1.2 million people for an anti-government rally. In response, the government imposes martial law. Soldiers open fire on unarmed student protesters. The death toll is disputed, but unofficial estimates place it as high as several thousand. About 10,000 protesters are arrested. Chinese tanks make their way down the middle of Tiananmen Square and are stopped by an unidentified man standing in front of them. His actions are still used to represent non-violent government rebellion. It's been 26 years since the 1989 Tiananmen Square violence, and there are still protests happening against the Chinese government. The 2011 pro-democracy protests and the 2014 riots in Hong Kong serve to illustrate how China's current popular unrest mirrors and builds off the same foundation that was created by the students of the 1989 protests. To learn just how bad censorship in China is, take a look at our full video here. Thanks for watching TestTube News. Please.
All right, so most of you probably paid attention to the protests in Hong Kong this past year. So obviously this still is steeped in tradition. It goes back to this 1989 protests where, again, students were rallying for more basic freedoms. I know we don't have a lot of time left, and I think I already kind of talked about this a couple chapters ago, the Vietnam conflict or war. Told you that it's called the War of American Aggression in Vietnam. So I'm not going to go too much into this, other than one thing we didn't really talk about. This was a picture I wanted you to see of a Buddhist monk. Basically arguing against the leader that the United States backed, No Din Diem, because he was persecuting monks. So he set himself on fire in the middle of the street. So this became kind of a common picture. And then later in the war, I had talked about carpet bombing and Agent Orange. That's what that first bullet point is. And then when we bombed Cambodia, which was not a country at war, but Cambodia was being financed by the Communist Party of China. 90% of their money came from the Communist Party of China. And so that led to the rise of the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot. Have you ever heard of him before? Okay, he was a communist leader in Cambodia, which was next to Vietnam and Laos. And he killed about 1.5 to 2 million people, or 20% of the population. And that party would continue on through the 1990s. And I was reading in 2005, a couple of men that were in charge of the party, not Pol Pot, he died, were put in jail for crimes against humanity, which is basically genocide. But they tried to create a communist society. And a lot of people say that they came to power because the US was trying to back South Vietnam so much, and they were so disliked. The other picture I want to show you is right here. So the Khmer Rouge, again, in Cambodia, was another communist party that came out of the North Vietnamese party and was backed by China. And these are real pictures. They're disturbing. Yes? Yeah. And this created a lot of chaos on that peninsula. And it's why you have a lot of refugees that have fled there as well. All right. We skipped over a video that I wanted you to watch on the Great Leap Forward. If you get a chance, you want to go back and watch that. There's student paste on there, okay? It's not bad. It's pretty good animated, and it gives you a lot of interesting facts. I hope you guys learned something today. I'm not going to give you any exit ticket or anything. I don't really feel like it. Kind of got those Wednesday vibes right now. So, here's what's going on before you pack up. Homework tonight is nothing formal to turn in, okay? Get caught up. Tomorrow, we're going to be looking at documents that kind of reinforce Maoism, Little Red Book, stuff like that, okay? And doing some skills work. And then Friday, you have a discussion. So plan on asking some better questions than last week, please, that get some just people being able to make opinionated answers, like kind of like I've done the last 2 days with you. All right. Everyone good with that? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share. Thanks everybody. Sorry if the videos were a little bad for you online. Trying my best here. Have a great rest of your day.